I'm going to go ahead and get started so that we can end on time. I like to be cognizant of everybody's time. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Firecat Susan Price. I'm the CEO and lead strategist of Firecat Studio, and we are a digital agency that specializes in user experience design and usability. But I've got a lot of smart friends, some of whom are panelists on today. We've got joining us to talk about a recent really exciting project that they finished is Jenia Espe and Tara Schwegler. Jenia is an MBA and Tara is a PhD, cultural anthropologist, which if you don't know how important cultural anthropology actually is to user-centered design and customer-centric organizations, you are about to find that out because these two ladies are amazing talents in this space, world-class talents. They've worked for Fortune 100 companies. They've done a whole lot of really important work for government agencies, financial service organizations, and nonprofits. So, shout out to fellow cultural anthropologists. Yay. All right, so I've also got on deck Tom Vaughn, who's with Firecat Studio as a lead user experience consultant. He has a lot of deep experience. We met at USAA, the big financial services organization. I also met Jenia and Tara there. And Tom has gone on to work at exciting places in the Pacific Northwest like Microsoft and Amazon. So without further ado, I would like to lead off our discussion. I'm going to ask a few questions. Our format's going to be slightly different today. Usually I just turn it over to the presenters, but I'm going to be asking them a series of questions and then they'll riff on that. So Jenia and Tara, why don't you introduce yourselves a little bit more?
Sure. I'm Jenia Espe. I am a co-founder of RedSquared Consulting. Before RedSquared, as Susan mentioned, we all met at USAA. Tara and I actually worked on the same team, and now we are the team. My background is in business strategy, user-centered design, and I guess I do project management as a hobby because nobody else wants to do it. So yeah, here we go.
And I'm Tara Schwegler. I am also a co-founder of RedSquared Consulting, and as Susan mentioned, I'm a cultural anthropologist by training. So I started my journey on the academic side of things and was a professor at the University of Chicago. And then we ended up moving to San Antonio, and I got involved in the usability and market research space at USAA, and then made my way into customer experience strategy and got onto Jenia's team, which was a great moment for me because I found a way to use this approach of in-depth understanding of people and of their behaviors to really inform business strategy. So I left USAA in, I think it was 2013, and Jenia and I formed RedSquared Consulting, and we've had about, I think we did the math the other day, and over 30 clients in the nonprofit, government, financial service sectors. So it's been great.
We can't hear you, Susan.
I had muted so you didn't have to hear my ambient. Welcome, Eric Morse. Good to see you. Christina, Ashley. Hi. We are getting started with Firecat First Friday. Welcome. We hold these once a month, and we usually have a guest presenter or one of our Firecats presents on a topic to do with digital experience design, digital marketing, usability, and digital life. So today we've got two heavy hitters. If you've joined us late, Jenia Espe and Tara Schwegler, you're seeing on our screen, and I am going to ask them a few questions about a recent really exciting project they did for the city of San Antonio. So tell us about the CivTech Challenge.
Okay, well, real quick, CivTech is a partnership between Gigdom and the city of San Antonio. And if you don't know who city of San Antonio is or Gigdom are, just Google. I'm just trying to be efficient with the responses. We have a lot to cover. So the CivTech has different programs on it. We applied for the residency program. It is a 16-week program where the city invites startups to solve challenges, kind of like perennial challenges that were probably difficult to solve in the past or haven't been solved for a variety of reasons. So it's a competitive process, kind of like an RFP, because you do submit proposals. Then there's a committee, they invite you to kind of pitch to them, and then they declare a winner. So here we are.
Awesome. So what was the challenge? Did you propose a problem to solve, or were you given a challenge?
No, it's interesting. Every year, CivTech and Geekdom introduce 5 different challenges. Maybe the number varies from year to year. And usually these are within specific departments. So there was another challenge about garbage collection and how to reduce the amount of recyclables that end up in regular waste bins. But the challenge that we were asked to solve was to come up with an app to simplify the payments process for San Antonio residents, and so initially the scope of this was rather narrow, and it sounded a lot like a tech challenge. And when we start our presentation, we can give you the exact verbiage, but the idea was come up with an app that's going to make interacting with the city of San Antonio easier for residents. And one of the main components was payments, but it was also address changes and trying to facilitate communication across the various departments in the city of San Antonio. So if you interacted with one department, the interaction would cascade down and everyone would have that information. So really the challenge was to try to make life easier for San Antonio residents through some sort of app.
It sounded like a world peace a little bit.
Yeah, it's easy for these government websites to become solving world hunger really quickly. Do you want to launch into showing us what you guys came up with?
Sure. What I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to stop our video just because it's, anyway, that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to share screen because we have a presentation, and then we'll open it for Q&A for you guys. Okay, question number 1. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. If somebody can't, say something now because we're moving on. Okay. Yeah, let me, okay. So just real quick, you can read the challenge. That's exactly how it was worded. We took a couple sentences out to make it easier to read. Perhaps one of the attractive parts to the city when we applied, and the reason we're sharing that, I'm not sure who's in the audience exactly, but if you're interested in working with the government, we'll just share in our experience and estimation what kind of helped us got that challenge. We proposed a fairly simple approach, 3 phases: understand, design, and implement. And understand was the critical part of this challenge, and that's where we did a lot of work and research with the residents, with stakeholders, with employees, and then of course we took the findings and we did design sessions. We actually did design sprints, and then we implemented. Implementation was a prototype where we partnered with a local development company, Iris. We're not coders. Tara and I do not write code. We will not write code. So that might explain to you why a company which doesn't code or produce apps won the challenge, because we really wanted to design something that the residents needed versus kind of to demonstrate our technical abilities and just design an app based on our impressions. So that's the approach. As I mentioned to you before, research is kind of the core of what we did. So I will turn it over to the Chief Research Officer, Tara, and we'll move on.
So as many of my fellow UXers know, one of the key methods that we would rely on to really execute on this challenge would be observation. We'd want to go and be at the sites where residents are currently interacting with the city face to face. And if you're following me, you can kind of see where I'm going. We were awarded the challenge in May, and the duration of our residency ran from June to September of 2020. So right smack dab in the middle of the COVID lockdown. And so our traditional method, the one that we usually rely on so heavily of observation, was not open to us. And in fact, many of the payment centers where residents would go typically to pay bills were closed themselves. So we really had a twofold issue. One was, how are we going to get the richness of the observation data in a different way? And then the second aspect of this is, as Jenia mentioned, we applied really emphasizing the resident perspective and the fact that we wanted to collect that. But as you all know, there's more than one constituency here. We need to understand what stakeholders are thinking, what key people in the city are thinking. We need to understand the resident perspective, but we also need to understand the employee perspective, because employees are a rich source of data. So what we did was try to figure out the next best option. So in terms of stakeholder interviews, as I mentioned, we talked to over 30 people in the city of San Antonio and in a variety of different capacities, not those just directly connected to payment, because we wanted to make sure that we were taking a broad view of this. We also talked to leaders of various nonprofit organizations such as San Antonio 2020, the Haven for Hope, St. Vincent de Paul, San Antonio Youth. And we did this because we felt that these organizations, the people in these organizations might be able to give us a little bit of insight into the more vulnerable populations in San Antonio, because we have a real dedication to the concept of equity in this app, and we wanted to make sure that we were reaching a wide group and not excluding certain people. So it was important to us to talk to the people in these organizations and to hear what they could tell us about residents. The main technique that we used to gather insights from residents were these online resident focus groups. And you see an image of this on the screen. And I'll tell you the truth, I was not, initially, I would have preferred to do this in person. I've always done them in person, and I feel like I can build a good rapport in a room. So moving to the online focus group was slightly uncomfortable, but again, it's what we had to do. And what I've discovered in this process was actually that this did enable us to recruit a more geographically diverse group of residents. We got residents from all of the city council districts, and we got a really great age, gender, and race mix in these online groups. And what we noticed is, in the online setting, people often were more open from the beginning. So there was a silver lining to this. So we conducted these groups. There were 4 of them with 19 participants. And I should mention, we would want to, if we're taking the app forward, we would want to do more research. This is just the tip of the iceberg to get the initial concept. And then the last critical component of the research was employee focus groups. So as I mentioned, the city already has payment centers where people might go to pay a water bill, or they might go to get a permit. And so we wanted to talk to the employees in those particular jobs, not only to understand what they could tell us about residents, but what they could tell us about their own pain points. Because when we think about how do you manage, once this app is developed, how do you do the change management within the city, addressing and understanding employee concerns at the outset really helps facilitate that process.
Tara, do you mind if I pause you just for a second?
Sure.
I would love to have a little bit of interaction here, and
Great.
I'm going to launch a poll.
Okay.
Just, while you're thinking about focus groups, I'm wondering whether the folks on the call have been thinking about, what would I have said in such a thing, right? So I'm going to launch this poll. Hopefully you guys can see it now.
Okay.
And go ahead and answer the poll. Just looking to see what does your own interaction footprints look like?
Well, Susan, I'm so glad that you're launching this poll, because this was part of the criteria that we used to identify possible candidates for the online focus groups, was really getting a rigorous understanding of what level of interaction do they have? And we were recruiting a mix. We didn't want to have all power users, but we wanted to have people who had some familiarity with,
right.
Yeah.
I would expect that these folks on this call are power users.
Yeah.
And that we probably have more understanding of when to contact the county versus the city, or the state versus the city. But I'm hoping you're going to get to that kind of stuff soon.
Don't jump the shark, Susan.
All right, sorry. One of the things I wanted to highlight too, for those of you who may be somewhat new to UX, user experience design, it's very common that we want to just slow everything down just for a minute and talk about who are we designing for. So just to bring it all the way down to bare metal, we always ask for who is this for? And you'll notice that in Tara and Jenia's work, they've identified several different types of people, and we spend in UX a lot of time diving into that. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and display the results.
Susan, if I can just really quickly interject, that's what makes working with a city or a municipal body very interesting, because you ask them, well, who is your target user? And of course, they need to serve everyone. We need to serve all 1.3 million San Antonio residents. Now, we know that no single app is going to meet all the needs of 1.3 million people. So then you have to get really creative about, okay, what tasks are being used most frequently and by whom, and perhaps what groups do we want to try to serve better with this app? And so there's a very interesting back and forth that has to happen.
Yep. Do any of these results, are you seeing the results, and do they surprise you?
Not really.
I'll tell you what surprises me is the number of people who are at the county website.
Maybe election had something to do with it. But,
or maybe we've got more people who own property than would be normal.
Yeah. Can we close it?
Of course.
We
go ahead.
We might be running out of time, so we're going to speed it up.
You go ahead.
So very briefly, I just wanted to share one of the techniques that we used prior to the mini groups to try to build some rapport and to get our participants thinking about the sessions beforehand, was we asked them to create a collage of the city services that they use most frequently. So the top 3 or 4, and we've given you a few examples of these collages. And Susan, to your point, I just want to highlight the collage at the bottom that says CPS, Department of Motor Vehicles. Obviously, the Department of Motor Vehicles is not a city agency, but when we're asking people unprompted, tell us about your experiences with the city, so many people talked about the DMV and their vehicle registration, which was itself a really great insight. And I would just say, if there's interest, I won't spend too much time on this, but these collages are a great way to get people to reflect. And they're also a tremendous artifact to have when you are sharing with stakeholders. I can say something until I'm blue in the face, but when I share with a stakeholder some of these collages and say, look, this is what people are trying to express, it really has an impact. So very briefly, in terms of the findings, we had a ton of findings, but we really wanted to whittle it down to just a few to share with you today. And one of the most important ones for us was when we talked to city employees, many of them talked about their frustration that so many resources are out there for residents online on the City of San Antonio website. And they felt a little frustrated and said, look, we're putting all this out there. When we talked to the residents, the perspective we got was, it's so hard to find this information. There's so much out there. And then if I do happen to stumble upon the right document, it's written in a way that is not terribly clear to me. And I think the real insight that we brought to the city was, when people are dealing with government agencies, they want to get it right. There's a real concern about, if I'm doing the wrong thing, I could get in trouble. And so there was a mismatch in terms of how the city and residents were thinking about the information that was out there. And we heard a bit of a mentality like, well, residents need to understand how the city works. Well, to tell you the truth, I'm not sure that I believe that residents need to understand all of the back office workings to get a permit or to perform some sort of basic task. And so this is one of the challenges that we realized we needed to address going forward.
So the initial challenge became a more nuanced challenge as you dug in.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the second one, and Susan, this is the one you had mentioned, many residents don't distinguish between city, county, and state services. And I've got someone, I know at least someone from Vermont, so I'll just say in San Antonio, what we have is the city would control parking issues, right? So if you got a parking ticket downtown, that would be a city issue. The county controls our car registration stickers. So we actually buy those through the county. And then the driver's license and license plating you're doing through the state. And this is not something that is terribly clear to quite a few residents. And you'll see we have this little list. We asked residents to write down what all of the interaction, what all the payments that they have made to the city were in the past year prior to the session. And you see this particular participant wrote registration stickers paid online. Well, the truth is she didn't actually interact with the city to do that. She interacted with the county, but that's not something that is apparent. And what's interesting from the perspective of the city is it would be very easy for them to say, well, look, we can't be responsible for registration stickers and for the Department of Motor Vehicles. And that's absolutely true. But when we think from an experience perspective, the understanding and insight that we brought is your residents are evaluating city services on the basis of experiences that they're having in the Department of Motor Vehicles. And this will not be a newsflash. Many of those experiences are not good. So this was a point that I think is really going to spur some attempts to cooperate and streamline not only within the city of San Antonio, but across municipal bodies. This particular finding was what we call the Easter egg of our research. The focus, as you guys, of the challenge was really on payments and transactions. And when we had these mini focus groups, what we heard over and over again from residents is, what I really want from the city is to learn about all the amazing events that are going on. And residents were reporting to us that they'd sometimes go to the visitors website, the San Antonio visitors website, to try to figure out what cool events are going on this weekend or what things are happening. And so there was a really strong appetite for some sort of aggregated perspective on what sorts of events are happening, because there's always this fear of missing out. We all know that there's great stuff happening, but you have to go maybe to Eventbrite and you have to go here and there or rely on Facebook posts from your friends to really get an idea of what's going on. So this is where we tried to shift a little bit in our design and make sure that we're addressing the challenge, but we're also really responding to this resident need. And I've just included a few quotes here from the focus groups to demonstrate with you the types of issues that people brought up. And so at the beginning, we had a participant, I jokingly refer to him as one of my favorite because he just articulated things so clearly. And one thing that might come as a surprise is he's a 68-year-old man who was a whiz with the computer. And that's one of the things that we have known and that we're also trying to really publicize with our clients is that the older population actually does use computers. They can be very technologically savvy and they shouldn't be written off. So the other thing that we noticed in this and that we heard quite frequently was the idea that for an app to be worth downloading and keeping on your phone, it's got to really perform. It can't just be something that's there taking valuable real estate. If residents don't see the value, they're not going to adopt it. So just one last one I want to highlight at the bottom is we had several participants talk very much about the inequality and experiences in the city of San Antonio. So a real concern for parts of the city being left out of development plans.
Okay, well, we're gonna give Tara a break here and I will walk you through CARE model. So what's that all about? Well, remember the challenge kind of stated, give us an app, but really app could be anything, but give us a way to make interactions for the residents easier. So part of doing research is gathering all the insights, but at the end it's like, okay, so we have all this, now what? So, well, this is what we created with the some of the research findings. So the big aha moment came that the research led us to discover how residents think about interactions with the city. And it turns out that not all the interactions are equal. And again, for simplicity, we just broke the interactions into 4 categories. We do understand things can be more nuanced, but on a high level, there are really 4 kind of buckets, if you will, of interactions. There are things that residents just have to comply with. There's a regulation, you have to fill out paperwork, you have to pay a fee, you have to pay a fine, you have to file a permit to build an extension to your house, or you have to deal with inspections. So those are the things we didn't ask for, but the government kind of inspires us to do through various ways. So then the next part is government, and the city government provides services. How do we access it? So accessing those services is another big and a very important category. You can access services or benefits like electricity, water, trash, recycling, voting. Again, those things like voting is a county jurisdiction, but again, this is a model inspired by the residents, and residents just access government services. Government becomes just one big sort of persona for them. Then, okay, great, I'm complying, I'm accessing, but then life happens and issues come up. How do I report those issues? And things like, you probably reported plenty yourself, potholes on the road, stray animals running around, some code violations, my trash bin disappeared, or I have an outage. So in those things, issues, typically people don't need a lot of education. Remember, they're not interested how the pothole department works. There's no pothole department, but let's just call it like that. They're just interested in, look, I just want to report it quickly and efficiently. I want it to be fixed as fast as possible. And I want some kind of a feedback on my request. For instance, if it's a stray animal, tell me, did you catch him or her? What happened? And Tara already shared that through the research, we found out that engaging was kind of a surprise category for us. Our residents are not just looking for receiving and taking, they really want to give back to the community and engage with it. There was a lot of sentiment expressed about parks, libraries, special events, volunteering, et cetera, et cetera. So again, the significance of this framework is that it kind of simplifies the interactions. They're channel agnostic. So if you want to apply it for the web, you can. If you want to route the calls that way, you probably can too. So it really designed to be channel agnostic. And if city chooses to put it into action, it's not that it's only for the app. It's not. It's for the entire city organization. Well, I'm sure that by now you're ready to meet that app that we talked about so much. Kind of a couple of things. There are a couple of highlights. First of all, we're acknowledging Iris, the local development firm, which helped us to develop that prototype. So basically we gave them the information architecture, the user stories, and they provided the functionality. Some of the functionality was actually, it wasn't just kind of smoke and mirrors. It worked. It goes to actual sites. So again, those things that were kind of easy to hook up together, they did, and they did a phenomenal job. I'm going to launch it, and the easiest way for us, we discovered through trial and error, where it's a video. It just makes things easy for primarily for our audience. So Tara and I will kind of walk you through real quick, and then we will answer questions. And I'm going to expand it. Okay. So a few highlights about the One City app. It allows for quick access to the most frequent tasks and services, just as we heard the residents requested. It's organized by task, not department, making it more intuitive and user-friendly. It is focused on equity. We will walk you through an example later. And it integrates city, county, and state services. Again, we're acting on the user feedback here. And it also incorporates the latest technology like location-based recommendations, artificial intelligence, and personalized experience. Here you can see an example of an AI-powered chatbot. We call it Sammy Antonio. It is the concept which emerged during our design sprint sessions, which took place in August. Here, Sammy Antonio is guiding a new app user through a variety of features and providing them with a customized guidance.
The new app brings together content and tasks for current residents, new residents, and visitors. You can see the care framework infused throughout the app. We've grouped tasks that fall into the same interaction category and presented them in a resident-centric interface. Tasks like pay a fine and get a permit are compliance, use city services is access, report an issue is report, and explore my San Antonio is engage. Equity is a central concern, and we have put assistance front and center. A resident who's experiencing financial hardship can click Find Financial Assistance and be presented with a list of eight options in jargon-free language that they would use. We've worked with community leaders to identify the highest priority needs for vulnerable residents, and we envision these screens will include links to all available resources from the community, city, county, and private sources, because when you need to eat, you don't care where the aid comes from.
So,
the My Neighborhood feature puts everything a resident may need right at their fingertips. Using geolocation, the app connects the resident to everything from the nearest fire department, the closest city and county parks, and the garbage collection days. These resources will be displayed regardless of municipal boundaries, so whether you live in Alamo Heights or Balcones Heights, you will always see information that is accurate. And in this particular demonstration, we're showing you the geolocation feature of the nearest libraries because we found that residents are really, really passionate about libraries.
So now we're back to the main menu. I will show you a scenario for a current resident who needs to report a sizable pothole on the road. This is not a new functionality, by the way. We already have it in the current 311 app, which in this case will be just integrated with the One City app. On the screen, we're able to select report an issue, and we can see all the available options, and we click on the exact location. The next screen enables us to describe the issue, so we can add some color to it. Now we can actually add a picture. And I wanted to share an interesting historical fact with you that Tara and I ran usability testing and co-design sessions for 311 app launch, and this feature to submit a picture was much requested by both residents and city employees. You can see a nice picture of an oversized pothole here, helps the crew to identify the location. So it kind of sums everything up, and you can submit the report. What we also heard from the residents that they want to see some kind of a confirmation. So an email will be generated confirming that the issue was received and being worked on.
So new residents will be treated to a holistic onboarding experience that will make them glad they chose San Antonio. In the app, they can do everything from setting up their utilities to getting their new Texas driver's license. Using geolocation, the app will identify the utility companies at their new address and sign them up in a few short clicks. No contacting multiple providers and waiting on hold. Residents can set up multiple forms of payment directly in the app, including an in-person option, which gives them as much flexibility as possible. After setting up their utilities, they can get their Texas driver's license and registration plates to take some of the stress out of moving. One of the major complaints we heard from residents was the long lines at the DMV. With the fully remote driver's license process, residents can skip the lines and get back to what matters most. We think that this functionality will be particularly useful when given COVID times, where we know that there are lots of people that need driver's licenses and are unable to go in person to get them. The process couldn't be simpler. The resident can use the camera on their smartphone to take a picture of their current driver's license. The system will capture and scan the ID for verification, and then enable the user to confirm or add missing information that wasn't captured. So here is our confirmation screen for the picture. And once the resident clicks, or the new resident clicks next, they'll be able to verify. So that if anything was not properly captured, they can make sure that the right information goes on to the final driver's license. Just like setting up bills, residents can pay for their new driver's license directly through the app. You can use your camera to take a photo of your current ID, and if you already stored your payment information in a previous transaction, it'll be there for the next transaction.
Okay, very quickly moving on to the next scenario. It's for visitors in San Antonio. The main menu, again, mirrors care framework. Scenarios for new visitors. We have a family with school-age children who are eager to explore the city, preferably by foot. They selected family attractions, the geolocation activated and identifies points of interest that are close to where the family is staying. And they kind of review what they see, and so excited to find a San Antonio Missions National Historical Park. And our new visitors, just like probably many others, did not know of this hidden treasure, which is a part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. They're super excited to see and learn about nearly 300 years of rich history and culture. So our family packs a picnic basket and is ready for a nice historical adventure in our beautiful city. And we are back to the main menu again and ready for our last scenario. I'm sure a few of you have noticed the taco finder icon by now. And San Antonio is famous for a lot of things, and tacos are included in this long list of irresistible city attractions. Is the video running? Yeah, it is. So geolocation, again, is here. You probably heard a joke that if somebody in Austin asks for a good taco, the answer is get in a car, drive 40 minutes south to San Antonio, and that's where all the good tacos are. So here you saw the geolocation kind of enabled us to select a few taquerias. Then you can go read critics' review if you're so inclined. Then you can go back and actually select your destination. All you have to do is to drive there. And of course, drivers from Austin are very welcome, and enjoy famous San Antonio tacos. So we're certain that our visitors will be back in the taco capital of the USA in no time. So I believe that concludes kind of the highlights of our video. I'm gonna close it. And so of course, at the end of all of this, everyone, just like our current audience, you guys are probably wondering, okay, well, that's pretty cool. Now what? What's the big idea and what's next? Well, so the CivTech challenge really is so much more than the mobile app. We're testing the service model that will change how San Antonio residents access and use city services across all channels, including face-to-face, mail, phone, web, and mobile. We're also shifting perceptions of the city, and the One City app will demonstrate that the city is here to serve. This will increase much needed trust and transparency in government and government services. Well, how will this app make our residents' lives better? Here's what we heard in their own words. And we paraphrased a little bit because engagement or accessibility is not exactly how people talk, but you get an idea. So our residents do want a good quality of life. They want to be connected to the city and with the city. They want to feel involved and contribute to the community that's engaged in, that's what we use in the business world. They aspire to increase their trust in government. They're very concerned about equity, accessibility, access to services, especially for the most vulnerable residents. And they care about public safety and health. San Antonio is their home, and they want to feel protected, secure, and healthy. So the expectations of the city services are shaped by the residents, and the possibilities here are endless. And right now, the city is kind of really taking it all in and deciding on the next steps. And I guess with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and we can get back to us.
Are you ready to field some questions?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to invite you guys to join us in the main screen so that if you like, you can ask your question directly. And if you like turning your camera on, feel free. If you don't, there's no requirement for it. Totally optional. We have some folks on our very own Firecat team that just don't dig that. And we don't make them. One of the things that has come up a couple of times in our chat is equity and accessibility. And Michelle asked, did you have to give thought, or did you give any thought to people who have access to something like broadband or, you know, desktops and phones? Did that inform your strategy that you came up with?
Yes, we will give you an answer, but we wanted to, David Tapia is not just the attendee, he is a very important part of the team who worked on the challenge. And David, just give people a quick shout out. He was very instrumental in making it all drive to a successful finish line. And David, if you want to answer any questions, just, I guess, I don't know, raise a hand. I don't know how to do it on Zoom, or just say something. But yeah, we'll answer the question on equity. So.
Equity was a central concern here because, as you mentioned, in San Antonio, as in many parts of the country, there is a big digital divide. So people don't have internet access to the same degree across the country or across the city. So we needed to make sure that we were taking that into consideration. What we have discovered is that a lot of individuals who might not have access to the internet through a computer might operate on a mobile phone. So, but the challenge with that is that their mobile phones might not be the latest version and can't handle the same kind of graphic dense interfaces. And so when we're thinking about equity in terms of an app, we need to design something that can accommodate a broad range of phone types, and not something that's just designed to have the splashiest graphics and the coolest stuff. There needs to be a skinny version so that people who don't have that level, don't have the latest technology, can still access it.
Mm-hmm. One other thing that kept coming up for me personally was the decisions that you make about app versus other channels. In your example, you have made really good use of the features of a smartphone. So the location stuff and messaging and photo taking and that kind of stuff. Can you talk a little bit more about how much you thought was important to stick to app versus thinking more omni-channel holistically?
Well, I'll give it a try. To be honest with you, and we did share it with the city, just because the challenge stated an app, it was kind of a constraint in a way, because you can see how it could be easily channel agnostic. But of course, the constraint kind of was the gift that kept on giving, because we worked with wonderful local developers, and we were able to utilize the latest technology. So it kind of became just because the expectation was that we'll present it not in a PowerPoint slide format, not in a kind of smoke and mirrors comp screens or Photoshop, that it would be an application. It really kept us focused. But what we've said all along to our city partners is that the findings that we learned and that we put into action in a framework, there go so much beyond the app. Anybody wants to add anything to it? Tara, David? Yeah.
So did y'all think about like permitting at all in terms of like city functionality and county? I was just thinking about that because I have so many friends that tend to not know what they need a permit for, even like whether they're doing the work themselves or hiring a company and knowing whether they should have had a permit or not to do the work that they did. I kind of have seen that as like a middle class concern often that comes up in kind of the suburbia, urban living circles that are trying to renovate.
Absolutely. And this is where we talk about a little bit of the education mismatch, that it can be hard for residents to figure out what exactly is the type of permit that I need, because and if you're familiar with some of the technical language, then the information out there is sufficient, but many of us don't know, do I have a, is my heating system this type of system, and does it require this and does it require that? So one of the things that we would like to consider developing in the future is a tool where residents could input just basic information, jargon-free information, and then the city would tell you these are the permits that you need.
But yes, it would kind of require, it's the next layer, just like small business. When we presented to city council, somebody asked us about, one of the council members asked us about, what about small business? And it's kind of the next layer. It's not that we didn't think.
Some of the stuff in the app or in whatever first layer would be the most common things, have the most prominence. And then there would be a pathway to some of these other things, but they're sort of a deeper problem to solve and get people through, right?
Yeah. Susan, real quick, I'm going to answer a few questions from Sherry to panelists.
Yeah.
The comments, so she found similarities in corporate work. Did you feel the same comparing to USA? Sherry, to be honest with you, we didn't even think about USA. Somehow it just didn't come up. I don't know how, but it didn't. David, who was with us all the way through the project, came from his background is technical and specifically with medical technology. So we just kind of, we maybe looked at inspiration elsewhere. We did a lot of research on other cities and governments, and so how they solved the problem. But honestly, no, they didn't come up. Any push interactions plans, COVID updates, outages, so that's from Ashley. Yes, but we just kind of decided to left COVID alone, not because we wanted to pretend that it's not happening, but it's just not what we were. Anyway, it was a decision that we made because the city is doing such a great job. Louise, thank you so much, kind of doing all the right work now. We just didn't want to duplicate it because it would be in many ways a duplicate. And there is also Lily, who would love to hear from Tara more on between in-person and virtual focus groups.
So one of the things that if you guys moderate focus groups, one of the things that happens is usually these focus groups take place in some kind of suburban office park, and everybody drives up in a different car. And what you have is automatically people kind of sizing one another up as they're in the waiting room, as they get into the facility. And let's be completely clear here, equity is an issue across this. People are going to sense, oh, someone is wealthier than I am, or drives a fancier car, or is this way or is that way, and they kind of form these preconceptions about one another. And good facilitators can do a good job of overcoming those, but still that exists. And one of the things that we found in the online focus groups is a lot of that kind of was removed. Now, we all know that we stare at each other's homes and backgrounds when we're on Zoom like this, right? And we look, I mean, that's just regular behavior that happens now. And so I'm sure there was some of that in the online focus groups, but I felt that it was easier to establish a rapport. I felt that the participants were more vocal. What was interesting is, I mean, you recruit people so that they will share an opinion, but I really felt it was even easier in an online setting to have everybody contribute. And there was something about the fact that you have to keep your mute button on while other people are talking that kind of kept your over talkers in check a bit, right? So, but at the same time, so what I would say is I think that this is a great method that I initially was thinking as less than what I would have wanted to do. Now I think of it as something that would be a great addition in making sure that we're getting a diverse set of voices in the room. So
another question that was further up in the chat was about the information architecture, and I'm very keen to talk about that because it's the key underlying challenge of people don't understand which type of government they're actually interacting with makes that information architecture even more important than it already is in a super complex organization. Sherry mentioned USAA, a big financial services company that has banking and insurance and life insurance and, back in the day, investment. So it's already the city itself, even if you kept the boundaries exactly only the things that the city is responsible for, that's already a giant information architecture challenge. Can you talk a little bit about how you arrived at the CARE framework, and was that the underlying framework for your IA?
Mm-hmm. Arrived at the CARE framework by really studying the kinds of comments and the way that residents were describing their interactions. And as I was going through the data, I really noticed the way they used different language and talked implicitly about different expectations. So I had several participants who were talking about payments and saying, look, when I pay a bill, I just want to get in and out and be done. I don't want you to, have great pictures of San Antonio up there. Just let me do it. And then we heard all of this enthusiasm around events and show me this really robust events calendar and let me know what's going on. And so we started to sense that there were multiple experiences based on the type of task that someone was trying to complete. And compliance, by the way, that's also just, I don't want to learn about the law. I don't even want to really be here to do this, but if I don't, you're going to either find me or bad things are going to happen to me. So that is a forced interaction. So you really want to be cognizant of that as you're designing it. You want to make it easy as possible for people to pay their fines and do things that they don't really want to do. So when we kind of got to that realization, it's exciting because what the city provides is immense, but if you can break it down into thinking about what are people's expectations from the interaction and what are they trying to accomplish, it gives you a framework that can expand even as city departments change, right? The tasks that people are performing won't change that much, and even if the background changes, you don't have to change the interface. You don't have to rename the department and change that on the app. So it really was, what we're excited is that it was a resident inspired information architecture.
Susan, if I can add real quick, we also wanted to, like, the big, for us, as much as we'll have research, if we just write a report and give it to somebody, it's like, okay, it's great, but now what? Like how to make it actionable. So that's kind of like even my personal pet peeve. I'm not an anthropologist or researcher, but I appreciate all that, and I'm very kind of action-oriented person. So we thought, how can we make it actionable and simple? Because we can complicate everything, you know, in a heartbeat. And our initial research report, it's lengthy. There's a lot going on, but kind of like when you sit on it and synthesize for a few days, it's not just kind of an instant like, oh my God, apple fell on my head. And that's how we refined it. There were a couple of sessions, but our goal was to make it actionable and simple. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just, Christina had asked specifically, did you do a card sort, or how did you come at that architecture?
That would be the next step in sort of trying to organize. So this is just a minimally viable product and kind of skinny research, but a card sort is something that I would like to do in the future, and it's absolutely appropriate.
That would be validation.
Yeah. Validating any proposed architecture, the next step is to validate it and see if we organize it this way, can people find it? And I know, Louise, you've been studying different ways of organizing as well. There's so much there. It's one of the key problems to solve.
Right. 3% of our pages are generating 80% of our traffic. And so that means 300 pages are actually used a lot by users, 80% of them, where almost 15,000 pages are only 20% of the traffic. So we really do need to refocus, and there is going to be a shift, and there is some card sorting or different types of testing going on, and it's just in that early stage, and the next stage is to engage more stakeholders and talking about it. And we're kind of in the, is this a viable option phase? You know, should we look at this? And that'll be happening soon.
Yep. I'm really encouraged that the city is embracing UX and user-centered design to the extent that you guys are. It's, there's not a better time for it. We need all these services to be available online to keep everybody safe and to make the city more, be able to do more with less resources, because resources are at a time when things are kind of, there's a lot of challenges there. So I think it's great that these smart people are all working on this super important stuff. Does anyone else have a question?
There was a good feedback that not everybody from the outside understands card sorting. So real quick, it's a technique.
So card sorting is basically where, if you're trying to figure out how people would naturally, where they would look to be able to do certain tasks, you would put each task on a card, and then you'd have the main categories that you're proposing, and you would have participants look at the task and say that belongs in this category, and this one belongs in this category. And you would do that with multiple participants and kind of try to discern the trends, like where do most users look for this kind of task.
How does it know where the tacos are? The tacos, yeah, the tacos are the highlight. That's actually, we were giving kudos to David. He I don't want to speak for him, but it kind of started as a joke and became the most popular feature of the app. But when we presented to the city council, what's his name? One of the council members, he's like, you should get a Nobel Prize for that. So that's our next step, applying for the Nobel Prize for the taco finder for David.
Yep. It's so important to have fun and have a sense of humor. One of the speakers that I would love to have at an upcoming First Friday runs a team at Amazon that is in charge of Alexa's personality. And it's interesting to think about what is the personality that you want people to experience when they go into the city site.
We're building on the concept. There's a salsa sniffer. I love it. You guys are great. That's the way to generate ideas. Awesome. Right.
We were 1 minute outside of time, and I want to run our train on time. I will remind you guys that we're Firecat First Friday. We happen every first Friday of the month. Next first Friday in January is actually New Year's Day. So we are not going to be doing it that day. We expect everybody to be having a good time and relaxing and breathing a sigh of relief that we all made it through 2020. It's hard for me to even imagine that we're in December already. It's been a crazy year, but the disruption opens up so much opportunity, and I think it's just incredible. So next month we're going to do the second Friday, not the first Friday, and I will send out notifications soon, and you can follow us in social or come onto the Firecat Studio website and subscribe to our e-news updates. That would give you a heads up when we announce the registration is open for the next month. I'm always interested in what do you guys want to hear from. We can get SEO people, we can get usability people, we can get designers, photographers, technologists. So whatever kind of topics you would love to hear about, let me know. I'm Susan at firecatstudio.com. I really want to thank Jenia and Tara for sharing this important work. It's so inspiring, and even though it's about a city website, it's applicable, like Sherry mentioned, across, many different kinds of projects. So
you guys have been a great audience and phenomenal questions. We wish we could have spent more time answering, but we need to be on time. So.
But let's come back and talk about your next big project too.
All right.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll see you next month.
See you later. Bye, everyone.
Great job, Jenny and Tara. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Have a good weekend, everyone.